let's talk about a passage from Scripture that a lot of us probably know by heart, Ephesians chapter 2. You know the one. But today, we're going to peel back the layers on it and uncover this cosmic reality that's been kind of hiding in plain sight. You are fellow citizens with the saints and members of the household of God. I mean, for so many people, those words are just a huge source of comfort. They speak of welcome, of finally belonging. It really does feel like coming home. And that's pretty much the standard interpretation, isn't it? That this is this beautiful, poetic picture of inclusion, of unity, and of finding your place in the family of God. And look, that's not wrong. But it's not the whole story. Not even close. What if the Apostle Paul wasn't just reaching for some warm, fuzzy metaphors here? What if this is actually precise, technical language that's describing a complete reorganization of cosmic governance? So this is the core idea we're really going to dig into. The language in this passage, it isn't just about feeling good, it's about function, it's about authority, and it's about how the cosmos is administered. Think about it. Words like household, citizenship, and cornerstone, they weren't just picked because they sounded nice. These were loaded terms, pulled directly from a specific biblical worldview about how heaven and earth are actually governed. So to really get what's going on here, we have to do a little decoding. We've got to figure out what these key terms meant in their original context. And let's start with one that we all think we know really well. So when you and I hear the word saints, we usually think of other Christians, right? Or maybe some especially holy or pious people from history. But the source material we're looking at argues that the term is much more accurately translated as the holy ones. And that phrase has a very specific cosmic meaning. The holy ones. These were the members of God's divine council. We're talking about the celestial beings in his heavenly court who literally administered his rule. So when Paul says you are a fellow citizen with the saints, he means you now share citizenship with the members of God's own cosmic government. Wild, right? Okay, so what about the household of God? We tend to picture, a warm, relational family sitting around a dinner table. But in the ancient world, a household was a much, much bigger and more functional concept than that. A household was the main unit of society. It was an economic entity, a legal entity, and it had a specific mission and a clear authority structure. So being a member of God's household meant you are now an active participant in its work and its function, not just a guest showing up for dinner. All right, let's start putting these pieces together. If the saints are actually the heavenly court and the household is really a governing entity, then what does that make the church? This is the crucial point right here. Paul is describing a completely new identity. Believers get citizenship with the heavenly court and become members of God's governing family. What that means, in essence, is that the church becomes the earthly extension of the divine council itself. And here is where it gets really startling. This isn't just some kind of promotion, it's a replacement. The biblical story describes some of these celestial beings, these holy ones, rebelling and totally corrupting their God-given authority. So the church is being installed to take over that governing role. So how in the world is this massive cosmic structure held together? Well, that brings us to the most important piece of the whole puzzle, Christ, the cornerstone. Now, we usually think of a cornerstone as just, a symbol of support. It's important, but kind of passive. But its actual function in the ancient world was way more active and authoritative. It was the governing stone. This is so practical when you think about it. In ancient architecture, the cornerstone was laid first. Every other stone, every single wall, every angle, and the entire boundary of the building was set in alignment to that one stone. It literally governed the whole project. So when Paul calls Christ the cornerstone, he's saying that Christ actively governs this new household. He is the one who determines its alignment, he sets its boundaries, and he is the absolute, non-negotiable reference point for all authority within it. And this just brilliantly shows how the power flows. It's not a democracy. The authority flows directly from Christ. He's the one who aligns both the heavenly holy ones and the earthly believers into one single, cohesive, functioning administrative body. So, what's the ultimate point of all this? What's the purpose of this new heavenly assembly on earth? Let's see how this all builds to a really powerful new vision for what the church is supposed to be. The passage ends by calling this new structure a temple, a dwelling place for God. And in the biblical world, a temple wasn't just a place you went to worship, it was a throne room. It was the administrative center where heaven and earth met, and it was the place from which God's rule was executed. This quote from our source really says it all. The church is so much more than just a collection of saved people. It is a reconstituted divine council. It's an embassy of heaven, and it's tasked with participating in God's rule under the direct governance of Christ, the cornerstone. And this leaves us with a really profound question. If this interpretation is true, what does it actually mean to be a part of the church? It suggests it's not just about finding a place to belong, but about taking up your post in a cosmic government, one that's tasked with bringing God's restorative rule to all of creation. Definitely something to think about.